Welcome to Franchise Focus. I'm your host, Lisa Lankowski, and I am the owner of Milestone Franchising. I am a franchise consultant, matching people with franchise concepts, all at no cost to them. And Franchise Focus is all about talking with people in the franchise industry and shining a spotlight on those experts. And today we have, all the way on the West Coast, Ryan Englin, who is the CEO of Core Matters. And welcome to Franchise Focus, Ryan.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. Good morning, since it's much earlier there than it is for me here today. So Ryan, you are the owner of this concept, which is Core Matters. And I think it's really important for the audience that we explain what that is. So then we'll talk a little bit about how you got into that afterward. But let's hear from you.
Yeah, so at Core Matters, we are a coaching, training, and consulting company. We work with small business owners, franchises included, and we help them implement our process called the Core Fit hiring system so that they can hire better people faster.
And what an incredibly important topic, since the labor industry is, been very topsy-turvy for quite some time now. So
Yes.
all the more reason to have you on the show. And so Ryan, tell us about you. Tell us about your background. How did you go about creating this business for yourself?
Yeah, well, I grew up, so I'm really passionate about helping people that are in blue collar industries, that are in the trades. I grew up in a blue collar family. My dad was in manufacturing. And I remember as a child, he'd work 12-hour days, 6 days a week. He would take me down to the plant with him on the weekends, put me to work. I was cheap, free labor, right? I did what I was told. And it wasn't until I was older that I realized that one of the reasons he worked so much and he spent so much time there was because he didn't know how to hire and build a team. And even though his employees loved him, he always struggled finding good employees. So once I got out of college, decided not to go in the family business because I didn't want to deal with what he dealt with. Got out of college, went into the corporate world, and really developed an appreciation for process and systems. After that, I started my own digital marketing agency, and I worked with a lot of home service contractors. I gravitated towards the trades. And they would all call me and say, hey, we can't take any more leads because we can't fill our trucks. We don't have technicians. And so about 7 years ago, I said, well, let's see if we can solve that problem. Took my background in recruiting and hiring and management that I got from corporate, along with my college degree, my marketing background. And I realized real quickly that recruiting is a marketing activity. And if we don't approach it as such, then we're going to struggle as business owners to really attract great people to our team. So that's why I built the system, is to help these small business owners who don't have the education, the skills, the processes to really do this effectively.
Yeah, one of my top questions was, why blue collar work? And you just answered that so eloquently, and thank you. My background is also manufacturing and marketing, so we have a lot in common there. And the blue collar industry is a completely different universe, and it needs to be treated thusly. And sometimes it gets lumped in with everything else. Do you often see that?
Yeah, it was real funny. Back when the pandemic started, there was a lot of talk in the media and a lot of talk amongst peer groups about, oh my gosh, how do we do this remote work? Like, we are being forced to let our people work remotely. How do we do it? And I published a series of emails that basically said, I don't know, let's look at the trades, because they've been doing remote work since day one. Either the people are behind the truck, behind the windshield, going out to the homeowner's place. If they're in construction, they're on the job site. They've had to wrap their hands around this idea that remote work, it's just what they do. And you can't build a building from your home. So it was one of those things that they've always thought about it this way, and that adaptation of what the rest of the market had to deal with, they still struggle with it today. In fact, we see a lot of people now calling people back to the office because they don't know how to do it. And so it is quite different than what a lot of the white collar, or what I call knowledge worker jobs, are up against.
Yes, I completely agree. You to your point, you have to go out there. You've got to go do whatever it is that needs to be done. And in fact, during the pandemic, the franchises that did the best in during the pandemic, some of them were in the very space that you were helping. That was that home services space. And, because these businesses had to be out there, it was a one-man team sometimes, and they're coming into the home and it's one person, but you still have to have these services that are needed. And you can't just say, well, I'll tell you, I'll zoom in and I'll show you how to unclog your kitchen sink, which we just had to deal with just a couple weeks ago.
It doesn't work that way.
Right, does not work that way. So how do you go about, what is your process for, not your secret sauce, of course, but what is your process for then identifying, like, are you going out and finding the best possible labor pool for these businesses and bringing it to them, or are you teaching them how to go fish for them themselves?
I love that you said fish. Yes, that's what we do. We teach them to fish. So we're teaching them the process. I tell a story about the first time I went deep sea fishing, and I had to charter a boat. I had to hire a captain that knew how to fish because I didn't know what I was doing. There was just a big endless body of water, the ocean. Like, how do you find fish in there? So I had to hire someone that could teach me that, and I learned a ton. Still couldn't go do it on my own, but I learned a lot during the process. And so that's what we do in our business is we work with these franchises to really help them build this process out so that they have a great system, they know how to use it, and when things don't work the way they expect, they know exactly what they need to do to fix it.
What would you say is one of the biggest mistakes that your clients make that ends up leading to their labor issues?
So is it okay if I give you two?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so the first one is most franchise owners that we work with don't necessarily have a hiring problem. They have a retention problem. Now, some of those retention issues might come from the fact that when a tech shows up, they just hire them on the spot because they're so happy someone actually showed up for the interview. But they have a retention problem. And so not focusing on the idea that there are people here, they have hopes, goals, dreams, they want things out of their job, they want things out of their life, and really getting to know them and saying, hey, how can I make sure that this person wants to stick around for years? So that's a big one, but that's pretty big to solve. Like we can't solve that even in a 30-minute episode. But another one, something that is on the front end, is they don't treat a new application or a new candidate like they treat a customer lead. And that's something that they could fix right away. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to service contractors who says, no, when the phone rings, we book the appointment. If they send us an email, we're on it within 10 minutes. But they have this belief that when someone applies for a job, they can let them sit in the inbox for 6-7 days, wait till the weekend, nights, get back to them. And they don't treat it like that customer lead and respond right away.
That's a really great point. I had a few episodes back, Dave Woolman, who is with a senior care concept, and he has senior care, which was one of the most difficult retention. Talk about difficulty in retention. He has a team of 60 people, and I said, "What's your secret? Let everyone in on what it is that you're doing." And he said, "I treat my staff well, and I treat them like I care about them, and I want them to care about this, and I want them to care about our clients." And he goes, "It's really not anything, it's not rocket science, right? It's just," and he said he hears from other owners where they go, "Well, I'm not going to treat them well because they're just going to leave me anyway." Can you speak to that?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So did they leave because you didn't treat them well, or did they leave because that's what they do? We talk a lot about the human condition, and you'd mentioned that this other franchise owner, they care about their people, and they say, hey, this is what I want to care about. I hear so many people tell me, oh, they're just never going to care about the business as much as I do.
Right.
Like, what can I do to get them to care about the business as much as I do? And when I hear that, I ask them a question. Do you care that Susie's going through a divorce? Do you care that Jimmy's kid is having problems in school? Do you care that Alice just got a health diagnosis that might be terminal. Because if you don't care about the things that are going on in their world, they're never going to care about your business the way you want them to.
And that transcends back to the corporate world too, right? Right now,
Absolutely.
the biggest story that's been trending, I think, for 10 days on the Wall Street Journal is the quiet quitting. And,
Yeah.
this whole notion of people just doing the bare minimum. And a lot of it is a comeuppance to me, in my opinion, from corporate America, where there was that lack of care. And it was just piling on more work for less money, less benefits, just making a situation just as untenable as possible. And so when you sit there and you say that, you are absolutely stating, if you want them to care about you, you need to care about them. And when you do that, then it's a reciprocal relationship, and then you end up having a much better overall business entirely. Does that ring a
Absolutely.
bell?
Yeah, I mean, look at the airlines and the medical field right now, and the way that they treated their employees during the pandemic. And now they're questioning, I don't know why anybody wants to work for us. Because it's really difficult for a company to change their behavior when they're that big.
Right.
And so if you did it to them once, what are the odds you're going to do it to them again?
Right.
And nobody out there is asking, apologizing. We shouldn't have done that. None of these big organizations are doing that. And the airlines are just whining, oh, we don't have enough pilots, we don't have enough people. Well, because you worked them to death, and then you laid a bunch of people off because they didn't want to follow your silly rules. And there's no apologies for it, nothing. And so people don't want to jump back into that same industry knowing that that's probably what's going to happen to them again.
Right, without understanding. Yeah, so all great points. So the range of services that you offer to your clients, this is really focused on recruitment and the hiring process. Is there other aspects that you build off on that? I would assume maybe. Do you have other things that you work with your clients on?
We do. So everything in what we call the employee life cycle or the employee experience. So everything from what you have to do to attract people to apply for your jobs, everything that you have to go through to actually make a good quality hiring decision, how you onboard them, how you engage them over the long term, and then how you assess not only the people, but your process to make sure that you're continuing to get the results that you're looking for. So anything that has to do with the people that is not compliance related, I stay out of the legal space. I know enough about compliance to know where the gray areas are, and I love to play there because I'm more of a forgiveness, not permission kind of guy. But, we stay out of the compliance, we stay out of that. But anything that has to do with that employee life cycle or that employee experience, we help our clients with.
Do you also help in disengaging as well? And my apologies if you mentioned that. So if the owner needs to let someone go, do you assist with that process?
We do on occasion. So I have a really strong belief about this. If you're going to terminate someone for cause, then I think you really need to make sure that you've had the conversation with them. No one should ever be surprised that they got terminated. They should know that they were terminated because their performance wasn't there. They should know because you've been coaching them or working with them or mentoring them. We should never terminate someone and it's totally a surprise. And I find that especially in the small business world, it's one of those things where they've never really had the conversation. They just assumed that the person knew they were a poor performer. And then they go to lay them off or fire them, and the employee is just completely caught off guard. They had no idea. And I just don't think that's fair to the person, because they got to go home and tell their spouse and their kids, I got terminated today. And they really probably don't even understand why. So a lot of what we do around that is coaching with the owners or the manager, if they need to, on really how to have the conversation before it comes to termination.
Excellent. So Ryan, this is all a fascinating discussion, and again, so important in light of everything that everyone is dealing with right now. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we're also going to hear a word from the show's sponsor, Zoom One Media. Stay tuned, and we'll see you on the other side.
Aloha! Joe Silva here with Kukua Technologies. I'm excited to see you on Tuesdays on Morning Coffee for our tech tips.
Let's face it, lawyers get a bad rap. I'm Erin Brucey, host of Legal Breakdown, where we dissect legal topics for the everyday viewer, with a mix of interesting guests to talk about current events and hot legal topics. Let's work together to make the law accessible and relevant to everyone. Catch us every week on RVN Television.
Welcome back to Franchise Focus. I'm your host, Lisa Lankowski, and I have on Zoom Ryan Englin, who is the CEO of Core Matters. And we are talking about all things labor and hiring and retention and really key critical points that really any business, doesn't matter, franchise or not, everyone can take something away from this. So Ryan, we found out why you have a niche that's specific to manufacturing in the blue collar industry. Why franchising, and what made you get involved with franchising?
You know, it was understanding that in the franchise space, corporate's hands are often tied in being able to help the franchise owner with recruiting because of joint employment. And for some franchises, they don't care. They disregard joint employment. Some are very conservative and they want to stay as far away as possible. But the franchise owners don't get a lot of support when it comes to talking about things like pay and benefits and how to be competitive. They don't get a lot of support in how to make hiring decisions because corporate often wants to stay away from those topics. And so I saw a great opportunity to come in and work with these franchise owners, a lot of them who have decades of business experience, but often I find that they worked for larger organizations that had HR departments that took care of this stuff for them. And so for a lot of them, they're driving blind, hoping they can figure it out. And for many of them, they really don't have the time. So they make often not great decisions and hire people that aren't always a right fit, because they never really had the process or the training to do it.
And do you have any franchises that you work with, that you've worked with, and what type of franchises? I assume that they're also in that home services space, which is very trades related.
Yep. So home services and business services. So we also work with some companies. Team Logic IT is one that we've worked with. They're managed service providers, so they do networks and computer support for businesses. So business services is part of it. And then on the home services front, we've worked with some of the neighborly brands, Mr. Electric, AirServe, Mr. Rooter, to name a few. We're just getting started with them. And so, yeah, we stick with services. We stick with companies that do field work. We don't do anything in the quick serve space. We stay away from that for right now, and we just really enjoy working in the trades.
So when you talk about these three concepts, franchising is very much a process, and we've used that word a few times throughout this discussion already, and it's important because that's why someone is engaging in a system like this, because of the process. So do you find that they're very unique and different, even though they're under the neighborly umbrella, but do you find that they're very unique to their own selves? Or is it very like you work with one and then you know what to expect with the other and you know what to expect for the other? Or is it all just a big wild card mystery?
No, I would say probably 85–90% of it's all the same. A lot of what we do is change management and mindset, because they have to approach the problem differently than the way they've done in the past. And so that's pretty consistent. They all use the same systems, the same tools, so that helps as well. And I found that people tend to be drawn to a certain concept. They have a similar set of values, they have a similar set of beliefs, and so they're really not all that different, but it's the way they behave, the way that they treat the hiring and recruiting process, that's the part that we need to change, and that comes down to the individual.
Right. And also it comes down, yes, it totally comes down to the individual. You are correct. And then hopefully also educating the franchise systems a little bit more. I understand what you're saying about the joint employment issue, but there's definitely ways that they can be of value and assist more in this avenue. But I assume you're hoping they don't do that, because then that kind of pushes you out of the space. But I think you're going to be just fine. So we talked about why you aligned in the franchise industry and some of the concepts that you've worked with. What's your prediction for what's coming over the next 6 months? I know this has all been a rocky time for so long, for so many. And, we are more than likely already in a full-blown recession. What do you see happening with the labor market out there?
So the overall labor market, you've heard of the Great Resignation. We've all heard of that. They're now calling it the Great Regret. There's been a lot of studies that have been done about people that left their jobs or switched jobs during the Great Resignation in the last couple of years. And 53% of them wish they had their old job back.
Wow.
The grass was not greener on the other side, even though they thought it would be. We're seeing a lot of employers starting to make promises that they know they can't or won't keep. And so what's happening in the labor market is people are starting to sit still a lot more. The last couple months, it's gotten a lot harder to recruit because not as many people are looking. People would rather play with the devil they know than the one they don't. And because so many of them got burned during the Great Resignation and switching jobs the last couple of years, they don't want to make that same mistake again. So they're going to slow down. They're going to take more time before they go and do something else. Now, as far as the trades are related, I think the trades, my guess is that they're not going to feel this recession as much from a labor market perspective. I think that there's such a shortage of people in the trades right now that by the time that catches up, it's going to be a couple of years from now, and hopefully we're out of the recession. So that while they might feel a little bit of dips, I don't think that they're going to ever get to the point where they're like, oh, we've got enough people, we don't need to hire anymore. But for them, it's going to be really an emphasis on retention.
Right.
Because people are still going to leave. There's still going to be transient out there. And if we don't focus on retention and keeping the people that we have and people that that produce for us well, then it's going to be a problem.
And the trade shortage is really the area that is the most painful. Like that's really, and that was a pain point before the pandemic, where people were just not opting to go into that area, and it's seen such a demise there in that industry. And like you said, even if there's been a shift to going back toward into it, it's going to take quite the time for that to catch up. And, in the meantime, it's just everyone's fighting for the people that are out there and trying to entice them away and, and doing whatever it is. And like you said, to keep who you have and make sure that they're not out there wanting to jump ship and go to the next place, right?
Absolutely. The labor shortage in the trades, it's nothing new. I found an article from the 60s that talked about it. So it's been a thing. But I think what's happened, especially in the trades and construction, really a lot of the blue collar, is the employers, the industry as a whole, they've conditioned an entire generation to believe that they just don't care about people. They're a cog in the machine. They are a part of their profitability model. And if there's a problem, they just replace them with something else, just like you repair a car. If something breaks on your car, you don't go out there and say, hey, how do I fix it? You just replace it. And I feel like a lot of people, especially with their predisposition towards the trades and blue collar industries, they feel that way. Like we've just been treated like we're disposable, we're replaceable. And until the industry decides to come together and fix that, which I don't think is going to happen anytime soon, it's going to be a challenge. And there's always going to be a labor shortage.
Yeah, no, and it's the same thing in hospitality, right? That's the same exact thing. And until they change it and they really make great strides, it's going to be a continuous issue for the labor market in the hospitality region. So I think, and in corporate America. So I think what we're coming right back around to was from the very start, which is treat your employees with respect and kindness and care and concern with consideration, and that goes a far, far way. You know, you can throw all the money, and this is one of the things that I talk to my candidates about, that, you know, if you're going to sit there and counter offer with your job, you have to think about all the other things that led you to that thinking about wanting to resign. And money is only one piece of it. Money is only going to, you know, that's only one fix. There's a whole bunch of other avenues out there that need to be fixed, and they're not going to be fixed. They're just going to throw some money at it. So
Yes.
as an organization, looking and talking and keeping a pulse of your employees to make sure what you can do to make their atmosphere and make their relationship more harmonious. Does that sound
Absolutely.
about
Yeah,
right?
and then that's one of the reasons that our clients get such great results, because they stand out. Like, they stick out like a sore thumb in their industry, because they are taking a different approach and they are taking care of their employees, and they do care.
Well, Ryan, I am very glad that your clients have found you so that you can put them on a better path toward just making their business overall that much stronger, which then just everything has a ripple effect. So if you want to reach out to Ryan, because he does work across the country, no doubt, then we're going to put up his contact information for everyone to contact him, so you can talk to them about how to help your labor and, you know, making sure that it's as shored up, going back to that fishing analogy, that it's shored up as best as possible. And in the meantime, I thank you so much for joining Franchise Focus. Franchise Focus airs every Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And I'm Lisa Linkowski. I am the owner of Milestone Franchising, and you can learn all about me at my website at milestonefranchising.com.